recording has started.
Good afternoon, everyone. If you don't know me, I'm Rich Pisani. I'm the broker, and today we're doing a class on the RPA. I've been asked to teach that because I hadn't done it in a while. So I'm switching so I can see the Facebook also. So I just want to make sure that we're all set here. Okay, so here we go. So the RPA is for those of you who are new and don't know, is the Residential Purchase Agreement. So it's the cornerstone. Most of you who are new agents are most likely going to go be putting together an offer. Those will be your first transactions, will be offers. So this is the form that you're going to use. You get these forms through zip forms, and I'm going to share my screen. Hold on. So right now you should be seeing my transaction, my California Association of Realtors transactions, all of that. Okay, great, thanks. So when you open up zip forms, this is what you're going to see. And what you should do, the very first thing you should do as a new agent is you should create a template. So you'll see up here on the top, it gives you transactions, dashboards, templates, all of that. So if you go to templates, then you're going to add a new template, and this will be a new purchase offer. And you should go residential, because most of you are going to be in the residential realm mostly, as opposed to commercial. So, and then I'm going to just make a notation so I can get rid of it later. The category is residential. Do not automatically apply this template to any new, you don't want it automatically applying templates. So, excuse me. So don't choose any of the others. So say save. So it's going to bring up a blank template. And this is where you're going to put all the documents that you're going to need in a transaction. Now, since I'm only going to go over the purchase agreement, I'll only put in the purchase agreement for now, but you can put in all of those forms, the TDS, the AVID, all of those. There's a checklist available on the intranet as to what is needed for a specific transaction, and you can put all of these documents in here so that you're ready to go. So you first want, the very first thing you want to add is, I clicked add a document, add a form. The first thing is the cover sheet. And then for now, we're just going to add the residential purchase agreement. Okay. So, so you've basically built a very simple template that on all purchases you are going to use. All right. So you can get out of that. And so you're basically done. So, so there's your template. You can do one for a listing agreement and or lease, anything you do. So go back to the transactions, and I'm going to open this transaction right here. And basically, it's a transaction that I've done previously using this template. And, oh, no, don't want that. So, and you'll see here's the cover sheet. Oh, no, I'm going to go back. Sorry. I'm going to go back to templates, and I'm going to go back to the template that we created and go into cover sheet. And this is, you put in the buyer's name, the seller's. Don't do this yet because this is just a template. I just want to show you that there is information that will be consistent with every single transaction going forward, like the escrow. I would do, since if you're in Calabasas, just say we're in Calabasas, you do Parkway escrow or seller's choice. Okay. And then you're the buyer's broker information. So you want to input all of your information in here, so that on the template, it's going to create this going forward on every single transaction you do. I'm not seeing our address here. I know it's here. So make a note of this. This is our GRE number for the corporation, 01872625. Then your personal DRE number. So fill out all the buyer's broker, which is you, all that information. So then we go down to title. If you have a favorite title company, you choose that make sure to put the representative so that they get credit for it. Always ask for who you want or seller's choice, because usually it is a seller's decision. As far as the disclosure information, we have an affiliation with MyNHD, so we ask for MyNHD. We also have an affiliation with Old Republic. If you were at the team meeting earlier today, Jessica was on that call. So and then you filled out information that's going to be consistent through every transaction. It's basically your information as the buyer's agent, escrow if you're asking for escrow, title if you're asking for title, NHD and all that. And then you save that, and then you go back, and now go back to transactions, and you're going to start a new transaction. And this is where I was before. So now you're going to start this new transaction, and I'm going to go back and do this differently. Hold on. Sorry. You're going to start a new transaction. It's a new purchase, and you're going to, it's going to ask you for a name. Usually you name it the street address, however you want to name it. You name it, go ahead. Residential. And then you have this choice to choose a template to put together, and you choose the one you just did, and then you hit save. So now you have your new transaction, and in it you have those documents that you've put in there. Now, if you've added all the TDS or all of those required documents, if you've added them, they will all be here. And whatever information you put in here will be transmitted over to the new document. So your buyer's name, and then make sure you have an email address for your buyer, because you're going to be sending them documents to be email to DocuSign or a digital ink, whichever one you use. So it'll need your email address, and then okay, seller, you don't need their email address or their information. You need their name. So that's important. So make sure you get their name, and you can get their name from looking up the property on Realist. You can go ahead and do that. So you put in the buyer's name and the seller's name, and then I'm going to have you do one little thing. It's called MLS Connect. And unfortunately, let me quickly, sorry, I'm going to, should have done this before. I'm going to, hold on, sorry. Okay. So you're making an offer, so you know the MLS number for that property. So I've just chosen an MLS number randomly. So then in MLS Connect, if you're a member of SRAR and you're part of CRISNet, this is for some reason it defaults to CLAW. You'll have to change that to CRMLS. Then put in the MLS number and hit find. And it's inputted all the information on that listing. So go ahead and import it. It always says it's going to replace the information that's already in there. But if you've already put the buyer and the seller's name, it's not a problem. They don't disappear. So go ahead. So you've successfully imported that information so that if you go down further on your cover sheet, it has the MLS number, the address, the listing date, all that information, and then it also has the seller's broker's information, so you don't have to import all of that. So, so let me just put my name in here so it has some information on here. Hold on. Okay, so so that's basically all you need to do here, and you can hit either back or save. And it saved it. Okay, you go back. And then now we're going to get ready to write that offer. If it will go back, there you go. So here it is. And when you, this is the residential purchase agreement, but they've bundled important documents that you're going to need and you need to go over with your client. They've bundled them all together. And the very first one is the disclosure regarding real estate relationship. And this is a very important document. This is a statute, the state statute, that this is required. In the statute, it's required that whenever you're dealing with a residential sale, you need to disclose to your client the types of relationship, agency relationships there are, and confirm exactly what the agency relationships are, and we'll get to that. But the first part of the statute is disclosing what types of agency relationships there are, and that's what this document does. It's the very first document you put in front of your client. And used to be they were all separated, and you had to put this document right on the top of the pile to go over it. And all it is saying there's three types of agency relationships in a transaction. There's a seller's agent, which is an agent who is specifically has their fiduciary duty specific to the seller. There's a buyer's agent, who is just to the buyer, and there's an agent acting on behalf of both the buyer and the seller, which is also called dual agency. There are some states that have outlawed dual agency, California is not one of them. So, and I want to stress when, we're using the term agent lightly here, because when we talk about a seller's agent, we're talking about the brokerage. We're not talking about as an individual agent. We're talking about the brokerage that you work for, which is Keller Williams, be it Coastal Properties, Westside, or Calabasas. So that's important to note because it comes up in a thing later on. So on this form, since it can be used for either a buyer or seller, we're using it for a buyer. So make sure you check Mr. Buyer. And then my information is there. And the second page of this document is just the statute, how it exists in the law. So it's Civil Code 2017 79.13 through 2079.24. So this is it. And if you look down here, this says confirmation, and all this is that this is the second part of the statute, and to be on the lookout for this format. So that's all that's telling you. But basically, this is the statute as it exists. So that's the first form. The second form is possible representation of more than one buyer or seller, disclosure and consent. Basically telling the client that not you personally as the agent, but the brokerage may be representing another buyer on this property. There may be other agents putting offers in on this very same property from that brokerage. So we would then be a dual agent. There could be other properties similar to this that we represent. So it's just a disclosure giving that information. The third is a very, very important document. It's wire fraud and electronic funds transfer advisory. And it's very important that you relay to your client, the buyer, that never ever will you, the agent, give wiring instructions, and never ever should you give wiring instructions. They will come from escrow, and make sure that when they receive wiring instructions from escrow that they pick up the phone and call somebody at escrow to confirm those instructions. Why do we do this? Because wire fraud is rampant in the real estate business, and there are those bad people out there who are looking, who look through your emails and watch you. And I know it's scary to think about, but that's what they do. They study how you send emails, how you interact with people, and even texts. And just when the time is right, they take over your email address and they send an email to your buyer saying, oh, they've changed where you need to send the money to here. And they give wiring instructions, and then the buyer does it and doesn't confirm with anybody that these instructions have changed. And guess what? That money is gone a lot of times and not to be recovered. So it's really important that you relay this to your clients. So here's the first page of the offer. So it's really important to put what date it was prepared, because that date populates on other documents throughout the transaction. So so this is from Mr. Buyer on the property, and all that information is coming from that cover sheet that you filled out, even the assessor's number and all that. So you need to go over with your buyer how much you're going to offer. So let's say, I'm sure this is $1 million property, but we're going to, for my sanity and math skills, we're going to go, we're actually going to make it even easier on myself, $100,000, which is non-existent in California. unless it's land or something. So anyways, so $100,000, and as close of escrow shall occur, you either can choose a date or you can choose a time frame, the number of days. I had a client who had to close escrow. She's a freelancer in production, and she had to close escrow while she was still employed because she worked for 8 weeks at a time. So we had to say a specific date because before close of escrow, they verify employment. So, so that would be an instance where a specific date would be given, or number of days. If you're going to do number of days, standard practice is 30. But if there is a loan on this this property, then you should be talking to the lender to see how long they need to close escrow. And let's say maybe they can close in 21 days. Excuse me. So if they can close earlier, that's good information for you to have, because that may make your offer a little more competitive than anybody else's. So, so really have a conversation with the lender as far as how many days. So here is that confirmation, that agency confirmation, which is the second part of the statute. So, so Keller Williams Calabasas is representing the seller here, but hey, I'm also part of Keller Williams Calabasas. So, so it is a dual agency. So you check both by the selling agent and the buying agent is both Keller Williams buyer and seller, and it checks all those boxes. So now, if Oren was just was with a different brokerage, and you check that the seller agent, then you see it automatically checks there, and then you can do that. But that's not the case. So let's correct that. And there you go. And by the way, if this is done incorrectly, if it's left blank, if the since it is part of a statute, you need to redo it because it's a really important piece of paper. So you don't change it on the form once this is all executed. There is a zip form called real estate agency confirmation, and it's all it is these 4 lines and on a different piece of paper. Okay. So $100,000, and we're going to be putting 20% down. So 20% of $100,000. I've made it easy. It's $20,000, and there's all these options to check as in regards to the deposit. We don't want to check any of them. Number one, we don't want to touch a check. If a client wants to give you a check, say, please. The preferential way to deposit it is directly through electronic funds through escrow. Why don't you want to touch the check? Because the minute you touch a check, that check has to be logged. It has to be accounted for. It has to be kept in safe keeping. So you don't want to touch a check. So just leave it as it is, as in electronic funds. So that's all you need to do. If it's an all cash offer, you would check it here. But this is not. We're going to do a loan, and the loan is $80,000. And you always want to fill in this information regarding the loan. Is it an FHA? Is it a VA? Those are important because there's special regulations that go with an FHA or VH loan. If not, if it's conventional, leave it as is. But you do want to put in some numbers here that the loan shall be a fixed rate not to exceed. What are loan rates now? 3 point. Let's say not to exceed 3.5. You want to give a little leeway and not to exceed 0.5%, which is a point. A point is one point is 1% of the loan. So we're asking for, and what are points? Points are it's money that the buyer brings, pays to the lender to get a better rate, to get better terms. So that's what a point is. So you want to limit this. So you're saying that the buyer needs to get a loan at not to exceed 3.5% or pay a half a point. Now, if the lender, by the time everything is done, when they go to lock in the rate, and all they can get is a 3.75% loan, paying a whole point, then your buyer has a legitimate reason to back out of the deal because they're not getting what they specified. So that's really important to do. Additional financing terms. This is where if you, not so much now in this competitive market, but when, sellers to pay 3% of closing costs, or seller to credit buyer X amount of dollars. That's where that would go. So you see that it automatically calculated the deposit, and we want, oh wait, that's not right. Sorry, I'm sorry. We want the deposit to be 3%. So what is that? 3,000? Okay. Yeah. So I'm sorry. We want the deposit to be $3,000, and then a total down payment of 20%, which would be the 17 plus the 3. So and I'll explain why we want 3% a little later on. So there you go. So the next page, we're on page 2, and verification of down payment. So you always want to check this box saying verification attached, because nobody's going to look, especially in this market, nobody's going to look at this offer unless you show them that your buyer has the funds. Appraisal contingency. I know that people are waiving appraisal contingencies at this time, but we're going to go with the thing that we want. It protects your buyer, that if it doesn't appraise, then they have a reason to back out. In this market, it's acceptable. I don't like removing appraisal contingency totally, but it's acceptable to say the buyer will move forward on the purchase if the property appraises up to $10,000 less than purchase price. So that means if the purchase price is $100,000 and it only appraises for 90, then your buyer is already agreed that they're going to move forward, and they'll bring that extra $10,000 in. So that's important, because if it doesn't appraise, the lender's only going to lend on the appraisal, the appraised value. So if it only appraises for $90,000, then that's all the buyer is going to get, is enough to buy $90,000. So they would have to bring in that extra $10,000. So that's really important. And default is 17 days. You can shorten that. Once again, it's good to talk to the lender to see how long they need in order to do an appraisal. So if they only need 12 days, then shorten that to 12 days. Loan applications, the contract says 3 days they're going to put in a loan application. Well, nobody's going to look at this offer either if you haven't already done the loan application. So you need a pre-approval letter. So also attach that letter. Now, loan contingency, ask your lender how many days. So So let's say they can approve the loan in 17 days. So then there's also a place to remove it. Number 5 here is really important. Lender limits on buyer's credits. The lender, any credit, it has to be disclosed to the lender. So if the lender has limits as to how much money they will allow the buyer to have in a credit. So once again, talk to the lender, see what that number is. It's usually around 3%, because if they only allow $10,000 of credit, and you, without checking with the lender, get the seller to credit $12,000, they're only going to allow $10,000. So what's going to happen with that $2,000? They're going to come after you for that $2,000. So it's really important to get that information. Buyer stated financing. So basically, it's saying that yes, I'm going to get this type of financing. This comes into play a lot with cash offers. They can write the offer as a cash offer. Then they can, within the transaction, they can now say that they're going to make it a loan. Well, can they do that? Well, yes. What this is saying is that this is what Mr. Buyer is saying how they're going to purchase this. They can change that, but the seller has no obligation to make any concessions or any extensions in order for them to do that. So if they were buying this and they were closing escrow in 20 days and they said that they were getting a loan, well, they need to close within that 20 days with that loan. So that's what that says. Sale of buyer's property. If this buyer needs to sell his property before buying another property, he would check this box and another form would pop up. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. Addenda and advisories. Well, we're going to add to this the KW business addendum. I can spell. A business affiliations addendum. So that's that addendum that we have, that who we have a business affiliation with, namely the escrow company, most likely, my NHD, Old Republic. We have an affiliation with them, and we need to disclose to the seller that we have that affiliation with them, because we're asking to use them, so they should be aware of that. So in regards to other terms, this is any other terms that your that your buyer wants. If you, as a real estate agent, are related to the buyer, you need to disclose that. This is a good place to do that. If you are the buyer, this is a place to do that also. So stuff like that. So next we're going to allocation of costs. We're going to ask, is customary for seller to pay for the NHD report? I always ask for environmental also. It's worth the extra 20 or 30 bucks. Now what I've seen is seller to pay for the termite report. Termite is not to be a part of this agreement. Do not put termite in here, because in regards to credits, if you're asking for credits, then you can't ask for credit on termite work, because the lender is going to want, if it's on here, the lender's going to want to see that termite report. And if there's damage, then they're going to want to see a clearance before they lend on that. So you've just removed your buyer's ability to receive the money and do the work at a later date. Also, I've seen buyer to do inspection report written on here. Why it's written on here, I have no idea. Don't write it, because if it's on here, then the lender has a reason to look at it. So even if they say the buyer's going to pay for it, the lender now can have access to that and see what's wrong with the property. You don't want that. All right. So governmental requirements and retrofit. So we usually ask for the seller to pay for the smoke alarms and smoke detectors, make sure that in the water bracing, that's all done. Compliance with any minimum mandatory governmental inspections and reports. This is for those of you in the city of Los Angeles. This is where the 9A report is covered. And also to the seller to pay for the cost of compliance with retrofit standards. This is also in LA. You know, when you're selling a property in the city of LA, you need to have a retrofit company come out, make sure that everything's, the water heaters strapped, the smoke detectors, the carbon monoxide, and earthquake valve, and get the water certification from the DWP. So as far as escrow and title, for escrow, you're going to check them both and each pay their own fees. Do not write 50-50. It's not 50-50. Somebody always has more fees. So you don't want to split that down the middle. You want them each, you want the seller to pay their fees and want the buyer to pay their fees. Seller to pay for, we customarily ask for the seller to pay for title. This is all negotiable. So if a seller comes back and says, I'm not going to pay for it, then it shifts back to the buyer. Ask the seller to pay for county, city tax. If there's an HOA, they would pay for any of those HOA fees. In regards to private transfer fee, you don't know if there's a private transfer fee. So you ask the seller to pay for it if it's applicable. So there you have that. You ask the seller customarily to pay for a home inspection, home warranty, excuse me, and look it up how much it's going to cost to cover all that you want to cover. You always ask for upgraded. If it has an air conditioner, if it has a pool, others, sometimes washer and dryers are excluded. If you're using a specific company and you know that they have different levels, be specific, because escrow is going to order, most likely escrow won't order it. It's going to be ordered off of this contract, and it needs to be specific. So you as the buyer's agent, I would, before close of escrow, obviously, talk to my rep, talk to Jessica, if you're asking for Old Republic, and say, this is the house, blah, 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 this is what I need, and she'll help you and get it ordered. Now, if the buyer waives the home warranty, then you check that. We ask what's included. You mark off everything that's included. A lot of people say, well, it's in the MLS what's included and what's excluded. It doesn't matter. If it's not in this contract, it doesn't exist. So even though it's in the MLS, the sellers may have had a change of heart. So if it doesn't appear in the contract, then it's fair game. So make sure. And remember, if you're checking all refrigerators, then it means all refrigerators. I had an agent, she represented the buyer, checked all refrigerators. She represented the seller. checked all the buyer checked all refrigerators, and the seller took the wine fridge. And she came to me and said, well, is the wine fridge a refrigerator? And I said, yes. And guess what? You're buying a wine fridge for the buyers. So unless you want to go to court over it. So anyways, so make sure that you're specific about that. Leased and liened items, so items with solar, make sure that if there's a solar system or water softener, those leased items, because your buyer needs to qualify in order to take those over a lot of times. So buyer intends or doesn't intend to live on the property. That's important for the loan. If it's seller occupied or vacant, so possession, we always want to take possession at close of escrow. So, it defaults to 6 p.m. at close of escrow. A lot of times listing agents will, once they hear it's recorded, they'll release the keys, but there are those agents who say, well, according to the contract, it's 6 p.m. and they will stick to that. So be aware. Seller remaining in possession. If the seller is if the seller is keeping possession of the property after close of escrow, it depends on how long they're staying as to what form. If it's one day after close of escrow to 29 days, it's a seller in possession, SIP. If it's 30 days or more, it's an RLAS. It's a residential lease after sale. Why do we differentiate between that? Well, what you don't want to do is, if it's under 29 days, is you don't want to establish a tenancy. And that's exactly what 30 days plus is. So you'll see in the SIP, it's worded as a license to remain in possession. It's not a tenancy. So there's a big difference there. If it's tenant occupied, then we ask that the tenants vacate, but a lot of times that doesn't happen. So it's tenant in possession. And it's important to note that if the tenant has a lease, that lease carries over to the new buyer. So if they have 11 months remaining on their lease, that buyer is stuck with them for 11 more months. So it's also important to note, and I'm looking for it, it's in this section, that in regards to sellers in possession, at close of escrow, F, at close of escrow, unless otherwise agreed in writing, seller shall provide keys, password, codes, or other means to operate all locks, mailboxes, security systems, alarms, home automation, all of that. So the important word here is at close of escrow. So if your seller is remaining in possession, for 2 or 3 days, and the listing agent says, okay, we'll hand over the keys, when the sellers move out, your buyers have a right to the keys at close of escrow. That doesn't mean they're going to walk in at any time. They still need to give notice, but they are allowed to have those keys. That's their right. It's in the contract. So there's a lot of things arise from that. So anyways, statutory and other disclosures. This is where the TDS, it is a statute that it's required that it needs to be given upon transfer of ownership. So that is statutory. If the property is built before 1978, there are lead disclosures that need to take place. The natural hazard disclosure statement is a statutory requirement. Now, is the report a requirement? No, but the only way to get the report, the only way to get the statement is to pull the report. So, so it's kind of, that's how it is. So, also in here is the SBQ is a contractual item. So a seller can counter out the SBQ, but they can't counter out the TDS if they're not exempt. So that's important to note. So there are statutory requirements that we need to supply our buyers. So this talks about the natural hazards disclosure, withholding taxes, Megan's Law. If say to your buyers, if they want to go to this website, they can look in the neighborhood as to sexual, those on the sex offenders registry. So also natural hazard lines, the pipelines. There's also a website here of the underground lines. This stems from a neighborhood up in, I think it's around Carpinteria, that there was a natural gas leak and the neighborhood exploded. So condominiums. So the seller has 7 days to disclose if it's listed, if it is located in a planned development or common interest subdivision. That may seem like a duh kind of thing, but there are neighborhoods that are single family homes that are still under a home, an HOA. So they need to disclose that because, those HOAs, they have a say in what you do with your property. So that's that. Condition of property. So always, this is where it is in the contract. Properties in California are sold as is. So the sellers make no warranty about anything. They need to disclose any material facts or defects that they know about, and the buyer can conduct his investigations and request the seller make repairs. But the seller is under no obligation to either make those repairs or give them money for it. It's as is. So there's all these listing agents who write property sold as is, whereas seller makes no warranties, blah, 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 blah. It's here in the contract. You don't need to say it in a counter. So it's a little pet peeve of mine. So the buyers strongly recommend that they do their investigations, and they this whole section 12 is regarding their investigations. And if you are representing a buyer, there is a form that's called Buyer Investigations Elections, BIE. It's required in our offices that if you represent the buyer, that is filled out. And it basically, Mr. Buyer, this is all you should do. You should present this to your buyer at the beginning of the inspection period, because it says, Mr. Buyer, these are all the inspections that you have available to you, and you show us, you check which ones you decided to do. So it's really important in litigation that that's filled out. So that's all about investigations. Title investing. We do not counsel our buyers about title investing, how they should take title. They should consult their tax person. We can't give that information. We can't counsel them on that. Time periods. Time is of the essence. That's a phrase needed in every contract. So the seller has 7 days to give all these disclosures to the buyer. The buyer has 17 days, it defaults to 17 days to do all of their inspections. Now you can shorten that to be more competitive or whatever. Always consult your buyer as to what they want to do. So even if you shorten the days that they have to do their investigations, I want to point out number 14B5, that the buyer shall have access to the property to conduct inspections and investigations for 17 days. So if you shorten 14B1 to 10 days, they still have 17 days to go back into the property. If they want to bring an architect, they don't want to do any of that. So I've had so many sellers agents saying, well, they only had 10 days to do their investigations, but so the seller's not giving them access anymore. But if they didn't change that date, then they have up to 17 days. So removal of contingencies with the offer. If you're removing all contingencies with the offer, meaning that the buyer has no contingencies to back out, which we strongly discourage from, then you would check that box. Seller's right to cancel. This is very important. When you're dealing with a seller, when you have that listing and you're going over these offers with your seller, you need to point out to the seller, Mr. Seller, once you accept this offer, you're stuck with these people. So make sure, that's why we look to see what the best candidate is. It's not only about the price, there may be other factors here. So once those sellers sign it, the only reason they can cancel is if the buyer doesn't perform. And if they don't perform, then they can cancel the contract. So it's really important to go over that with your seller. Now, in order to cancel either part, in order for the seller to cancel, they have to give the buyer a notice to perform. So you can give the notice to perform up to 2 days prior to when the contingency is up. So say the contingency is up on Friday, so they can give the notice to perform on Wednesday. So, Tuesday. So they have Wednesday and Thursday, and then you can cancel on Friday. Yes. So yes. So, and I've seen so many notices to perform where because this language is exactly on the notice to perform, that they have 2 days after delivery, that the agent issuing the notice to perform has changed that to 1. You can't do that. If it's not changed here in the contract, then you can't change it on the notice to perform. So important to point out to your buyers that once they remove a contingency, that contingency is gone. So if they remove their contingencies for inspections, they can at a later date say, I thought a little bit more about what came up in that inspection, and I need to, I want to cancel now. No, that's gone, unfortunately, unless some new material fact has come up, then they have 5 days to decide. So that's important to note. Close of escrow. If parties are refusing to close escrow, there's a demand to close, and it works just like the notice to perform, except it's 3 days, not 2. So the effect of cancellation on deposits, if your buyer hasn't removed all his contingencies, he is welcome to cancel and is entitled to his deposit back. But if they've removed all contingencies and then cancel, then the deposit is there will be an argument most likely for the deposit. So that's that. Final verification of condition. This is important. Note the letters in all caps, this is not a contingency for the sale. What this is 5 days prior to the close of escrow that the buyer goes in and makes sure that the property is in the same condition as it was when they made the offer, that the seller didn't remove that fridge that was included, or they agreed to do repairs and those repairs were done. That's the purpose of the final verification of property. If that wasn't done, then they can't stop the sale. The sale has to go forward. Their only remedy at that point is to, you can try to get some money held in escrow, to cover some stuff. But if it closes, then they can go to small claims court to settle that disagreement. Number 16, repairs. The seller is under obligation to obtain invoices and receipts for the repairs performed, prepare a written statement indicating that they can do the repairs themselves, but they'd have to write down, the date of the repairs and, copies of receipts and all that. Prorations of property taxes, please go over this with your buyers that everybody thinks, well, I paid taxes in escrow. They took it out. Well, that was the taxes based on the seller's taxes. So, we all know in California, it works out to be about 1.25 of the purchase price is the amount of property taxes. So the seller paid less probably for the property, so their taxes are going to be lower. Make sure that you tell your buyers you're going to get a supplemental tax bill in the future, and it's going to have the amount of taxes that is the difference between what the seller was paying and what you're going to be paying. So make sure that they're on the lookout for that. This talks about compensation. Remember, we as brokers or agents are not a party to this contract. It's between the buyer and the seller. So anything about commissions, any of that doesn't belong in here. Represented capacity, if the property is held in a trust or if there's a power of attorney, if an entity is signing on that, then it's a represented capacity and there's another form that needs to be filled out. Joint escrow instructions and to escrow holder. Basically what this says is that escrow takes this contract and they, from this contract, they put together escrow instructions. So that's what that's about. Now, remedies, should there be a breach, automatically, the first remedy is everybody goes to, I'm sorry, I jumped ahead. First is liquidated damages. And I told you previously that, that we wanted 3% as a deposit because if the property is buyer occupied, then liquidated damages can be applied. And what make liquidated damages is that it limits the liability to 3%. So even if the seller was damaged more than 3%, that's all that they can get. So now we can't counsel our clients as to whether they should initial liquidated damages. They need to seek the advice of their own qualified California real estate attorney. But most do initial liquidated damages, so just to be aware. Then if there's a dispute, then mediation is everybody by reason of the contract, they agree to mediate first. Then they have the option of arbitration. So this is another option. We can't counsel. They need to seek the advice of their own real estate attorney. But a lot of people instead of going to superior court, instead of suing and going to superior court, they arbitrate. A lot of people think that arbitration is cheaper in the long run and faster, but that is their decision, and you cannot make that decision or counsel them either. This next page is, it has basically a lot of, it's a glossary type page, and it explains what days and days after and all that stuff. Excuse me. And then it's a place for the expiration of the offer. It defaults to 3 days, 5 o'clock on the third day. You can shorten that, you can make that longer, whatever. But make sure that you put your name as it being delivered, to, because it can be personally received by the buyer or by you. So make sure you do that, and then your buyer signs there. And then here is acceptance of offer. You've written such a great offer that the seller just signs it. Okay, and then it's done. It's accepted. Or they do a counter offer and they counter you on some things. So here's where us as the broker, the agent sign. Now I want to point out E, presentation of offer. A lot of agents, buyer's agents say, well, I want page 10 back, that the offer was rejected. It's required that now you have to send back that page. That is not true. It is not required that the page 10 be sent back and the seller initials the offer rejected. Is it a good practice to get into? Absolutely, it is a good practice. But it's not required. What they're referring to is E, presentation of offer, and that they've changed the code of ethics that pursuant to standard of practice 1.7, if the buyer's broker makes a written request, seller's broker shall confirm in writing that this offer has been presented to the seller. Now, what does that mean? So I, as the buyer's broker, send the seller's broker or the seller's agent an email saying, please confirm that my offer was presented. That agent emails back, this is to confirm that your offer was presented, and that's all. That satisfies that. So we don't have to send back that rejection. So that is the RPA. That is the purchase agreement. Now the buyer's inspection advisory, they've tacked this on, talking about all the different types, the things that you as the buyer should be looking into. Square footage is a big one, boundaries, permits. You do not pull permits. You can direct your buyers as to where they can find the permits. Also, I want to point out here, neighborhood area, personal factor, all that stuff. When people are doing their investigations, a lot of people only think, well, they're doing the inspection of the property. That's not only it. It's an inspection of the neighborhood. Tell your buyers to reach out to the local lead police officer to see what the crime rate is in that area. Visit the neighborhood at different times of day, because the neighborhood could be different during different times of day. So this is all part of the investigation. So make sure that they're aware of that. Now, this California Consumer Privacy Act on January 1st, it basically says that if you are doing business as a broker and you do X amount of dollars over, which our brokerage doesn't do, it's like 50 million or whatever. So what it says is that you need to make your buyers aware or your clients aware that what you do with their information, their privacy laws, their email address, their phone number, and it doesn't really apply. This is just an advisory about the law. So that is the RPA, and since I am 5 minutes over, I'm going to see. Let me look. I'm going to stop sharing right now, and I'm going to look at. See if there's any questions. Hold on, where's Facebook? Okay. So Mona asked, silly question: Can the selling party cancel if the buyer's agent and client are too aggressive? No. If they're aggressive but they still perform, no. They can't cancel because of that. LA City or LA County? I'm assuming that you're talking about when I was talking about retrofits and that it's LA City. Okay, county has to do with smoke detectors and all of that, and then there's state regulations and every city. There are some cities that have their own stuff. So how do you pull this transaction cover sheet? I'm having a hard time finding it. It's in your zip forms. So it should be when you open up zip form. So I'm going to go back. I am going to go back. I just want to make sure that I didn't miss any other questions. I don't see any other questions. So let me go back and share my screen. Hold on. Okay. So if I go back to my transactions, my cover page of transactions, and so I go view forms. So up here it shows all the forms that are available on zip forms. And I want you to note here, these are all of the CAR forms. Now this is a drop-down option, and there's other categories here. So you should look at the other categories. Anyways, so the very first is cover sheet. That's the very first one. So it's always there. Whatnot. I'm also while I'm here, I want to point out to you EPUBs, California EPUBs. Now, this is the booklet. When you get the form signed that the buyer and the seller have received a copy of the earthquake booklet and all of those guides and all that. That's this. 1, 2, 3, 4. All these 4 are those guides. Now 5, this is for your seller to fill out. If the property is 1960 or older, then the seller needs to fill this out. So, and then this form, this is the signature page. This is where you find the signature page that they've received this form. So once again, it's in this drop-down box where it gives you all these options. So I'll point out to you, if you're part of SRAR forms are here, there, and since I'm also Orange County, I get those forms too. So that is important to note. Let me look back. Sorry, I'm going to stop sharing again, and I'm going to look back. Oop. To see. Okay. Okay. I don't see any other questions. One more thing I want to show you. So let me share my screen again. Sorry. I'm gonna. I'll do this. Oh, I don't know if that's, no, sorry. Okay, still don't think that that's it. What is actually sharing on my screen? Hold on. Oh, because I want to show you this is pretty important. Hold on. Sorry. You'll be more prepared. I've been dealing with some issues today that I'm just a little, okay, hold on. All right. So now I'm going to stop sharing, then I'm going to reshare because I think I wasn't sharing the right thing. So here, you should be seeing California, car.org, the homepage. And I want to point out, you go to Transaction Center, and you go down here to Forms Advisors and Forms Tutor. Then we're going to go to Forms Tutor. And a couple of things I want to point out on here. Oh, what happened? Try that again. Oh, it's not going to do it. Let's try one more time. Nope, it's not going to do it for me. Anyways, go to Forms Tutor, and there's a couple of things. There are some, they're not all of the forms, but some of the forms are there, and they explain to you what the form is and answer some questions about specific areas of the forms. I wish I could show you it, but unfortunately I can't. So that's in Forms Tutor, and also in Forms Tutor is a great tool that CAR came up with. It's called the RPA Consumer Summary, if I believe I remember it correctly. So what that is you can send an email to your client with the code, and they can open up a link, and it will go through the purchase agreement line by line. It explains everything line by line. You should do it yourself, but send it to your buyer before you write an offer. Send it to your seller saying, this is what we're going to, this is the document we're going to receive. And so it's a really great tool. I'll try it one more time. No, it's not going to do it. Okay. So once again, it's Forms Tutor. Go into Forms Tutor, and you can do that. Let me look one more time for questions. I don't see any questions, so I'm going to say thank you for joining, and good selling. Have fun. All right. Thank you, Patricia.